Lebanon, from the crest of Armana, the heights of Sinir, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's den and the leopard-haunted hills. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes, one jewel of your necklace. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the daughters. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the others. Don't go away now, till it wants to arise. Come with me from the Lebanon, from the crest of Armana, the heights of Sinir, the summits of Hermon, from the lion's den and the leopard-haunted hills. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes, one jewel of your necklace. Like a lily among the thorns,
Hello. Hold on while I'm pushing some buttons here. Hello, my name is Alan Aguirre. As you can see on the lower third, you are a part of the Exodus Gathering Field Manual Devotional. So we decided, based on the new viewers that came over from A Rude Awakening in the last month or so, that we would begin from scratch week one, starting tonight. Um, because there's a good number of there's enough of you that have joined up that have joined us that we thought it warranted doing that. Now there's a core group of us that actually have already done this because this book originally, you know how we had the Olympics a couple months ago, but all the branding says Olympic Japan Olympics 2000 and what year was it? 2000 and I don't even know what year it is. 2000, I guess. But because of COVID, they weren't able to do it until this year. Same thing. So this field manual came out in March of last year, and so there's a core group of us, a couple dozen of us that already went through it and actually got into about I don't know 20 weeks or so of the second one. And then things opened up a little bit, and I was invited to come back to Rude Awakening and do a Shabbat Night Live based on this, since I wasn't able to last year. And so we're this has already been out for about over a year. It's a year and a half. It's been tested, it's been proven, it's been tried, literally out on the field. And so we decided we would start over and begin afresh with week one with all of you, all the new people that have come from the Shabbat Night Live Rude Awakening. And then that does two things. One, it gets us all on the same page. And two, it gives those of you that have already been through this a chance to share how your lives have changed, how you've been able to grow and mature in the things of the Lord, in the things of the Father in the last 18 months because of it. So it gives those of you that have already done this a chance to actually help in the process of discipling and raising up others. This is the format that Yeshua did. And so I'm very excited. I'm actually a little nervous. I'm very excited because that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to read through. So here's the format. I read through it, and then we go into gallery mode, which you'll see at the end of it, where it's opened for all of us to discuss and interact. And that's where those of you that have already gone through this get to shine. That's where you get to come in. I'm going to take a back seat, and I'm actually expecting you guys to help with the new viewers and the new readers in this process. So one of the things we asked at the very beginning of this was, what spiritual gifts did you want? And speaking in tongues and prophecy were the two biggest gifts that were desired. And so halfway through, we did a check, and then the idea was by the time we finished this, which was back in March or April of this year, the idea was that those people, those of you were going to you were supposed to be actively functioning in those gifts at whatever level you were at, and so you can actually, again, there's people in here that you can talk to regarding those things, and we have a group and band where we interact, and there's the Facebook page and all that. It actually is a community, and this is an organic discipleship training program, and so I'm excited because we're going to be able to do this again. And it'll be a great refresher course for those of us that have already done it. And it'll be a great way for all of us to get together on the same page regarding these things. I don't know what it's going to look like because this was written back in the fall and winter of 2019. And when it came out at the very March of 2020, it was a very prophetic piece of work. And again, there's many people here that can attest to that. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to align, what's going to happen in the spiritual realm regarding this. So what I want to do first and foremost is I want to read to you, because is Jason even here? Jason's usually our scribe. I want to read to you the premise of this Exodus to Ingathering field manual. And if you have your Bibles with you, go ahead and turn to let's go to 1 Corinthians 10, verses 1 through 12. So let me go find that here. And I'm going to read it out of the English Standard Version just so that, well, I do that simply so that nobody can say, oh, you're reading a Hebrew roots friendly version. And so it's, it's just, there's people out there that, do some really goofy things. Right, Grand Prix? So here we are, 1 Corinthians 10. And this is Paul speaking to his predominantly Gentile church in Corinth. For I do not want you to be unaware or ignorant, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ, Messiah. Paul is basically saying, look, our forefathers this is what he's telling the Gentiles. Our forefathers were saved and were involved with this whole thing. And you know what? Let me change this so we can get this lower third out of the way, and I'll backtrack. Basically, he's saying, look, our forefathers were saved in the desert with Moses. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, these things took place as examples for us, the New Testament church, the end time church. Anyway, I break that down in the beginning of this, so be sure to read that. For they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. That's regarding Baal of Peor. We must not put Messiah to the test as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, because grumbling will actually get you killed, as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them. This happened to Israel. The majority of Israel did not make it to their prophetic inheritance. The sons of promise were killed off in the desert. And these things happened to them as an example, as a warning, and they were written down for our instruction. The Gentile church, it says here, because that's who he's predominantly writing to, on whom the end of the ages has come. That's how we know it's the end time church he's talking about. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed. The Apostle Paul is warning us in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12, about what happened to Israel in the desert, how they didn't make it to their prophetic inheritance. And we are going to go through this to determine what it is that they did so that we can avoid it. How do we avoid the pitfalls that Israel fell into? How do we avoid either taking ourselves out in the desert or being taken out by God in the desert? How do we get from Egypt, Exodus, to ingathering, our prophetic inheritance, our prophetic promised land? How do we do that? How do we make it alive out of the desert? That's the premise of what we're talking about. That's the premise of this field manual. So if you don't know, my name is Alan Aguirre. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. Greatly appreciate it. It's humbling. And those of us all us old timers, we're very, very happy to see you. We prayed for you. We prayed for your coming and for your being here. That reminds me of a meme we just put out. What was that meme that I just saw that my daughter posted that I actually put up? Because that's kind of like what this is about. Let me just read the meme that I posted because I didn't memorize it. Here we are. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We prayed for you. We prayed for you to come to be here, to come here before we did the Rude Awakening show. And before it was broadcast, before it was aired. And so we don't take it lightly that you're here. It's thank you. Anyway, so here's our social media. I'm thinking you've already found these links, but here's where we are on the various social media links. And as you know, we have a store, the Planet Blue Media Store. That's our publishing company. We're self-published. And this is where you can get our resources, our calendars, our books. And there's even a pretty picture from the Feast Unlocked cover. All right, I took that picture in Jerusalem. What else? If you have anything nice to say, you can email us here at info@E2iSeries.com. If you have anything nasty to say, Lenny, where are you? Lenny Parada is the pastor that married my wife and I. You can email him with all the if you're disgruntled, because I don't care. What else? And so every Tuesday morning for the last 3.5 years, we've been doing a show called The Chameleon Church Show. And it's live at 8:45 a.m. Central. It's live on the Chameleon Church YouTube page, and it's live on the Chameleon Church Facebook page and the Travelog Network Facebook page. Anyway, so tomorrow morning we will be there. We will see you on the Chameleon Church Show tomorrow morning. And just in case you didn't know, you're watching the Exodus Gathering Devotional. It's not a show. It's a Bible study. It's a discipleship training program. And here we are. So I'm going to assume no one has anything pressing to say or anything of that nature. And if you're sitting comfortably, then we shall begin. Week 1, for the pleasure of our King, Genesis 15. We are starting this devotional. I can't believe that we're doing this, but this is going to be awesome. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there. He's talking about Egypt. And they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions, the Exodus of Moses, and they shall come back here, Canaan, the land of promise, in the 4th generation. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. I'm going to ask Lenny Parada, will you pray us in as we begin this new, I'm excited. Will you pray us in, Lenny?
Father, we ask that you would put your hand and your blessing, Lord, and your breath on everyone that's here today. And Lord, what we're learning, it's nothing new, but it's true. And we're learning it again. And there's so much to know. And I want to thank you that not only is it something that we get to do again, but that, Lord, you would make it come alive to us even more. You'd show us different places where your spirit's interacting with our spirit as the word of God goes forth and as the Torah becomes alive in us. Bless Alan as he has just been anointed by you to put this discipleship together, Lord, and that let it increase and let it just multiply among everyone here now. And I ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Do you ever get the feeling that you're serving someone else's agenda? That the season of your life isn't actually about you, but about somebody or something else? That your needs, your kairos, aren't being met? That you're inconsequential, unappreciated, irrelevant even, and not just by your friends or loved ones, but maybe even by your pastor or by God himself? And this being overlooked, these feelings that are fostered within us, anger, resentment, bitterness, sadness, loneliness, how can any of this be from God or a part of his plan for our lives? For Joseph, the boy with the coat of many colors, the reward for sharing a couple of prophetic dreams with his brothers was to be thrown into a pit and then sold into slavery, to Ishmaelites, no less. How is that a part of God's plan? Think for a moment of the 3 principal players in the passage from Genesis above. And remember this exercise, these exercises, because we will be doing a lot of exercises in the next 52 weeks. These exercises are meant to be approached with and through your spiritual reasoning, not your carnal, physical, practical reasoning. This is a very important part. We are going to be talking about spiritual matters, matters of the spirit. And if you do not process, understand, walk in the spiritual realm, but if you process in the carnal realm with your physical understanding, with your mind, you won't be able to keep up. We'll lose you. So remember, what we're about to do these next 52 weeks are of a spiritual substance. It's spiritual, and there's no room for the flesh or the practical reasoning because it won't make sense then. These exercises are to be looked at with your spiritual eyes and to be listened to and heeded with spiritual ears, not your eyes and ears of flesh. With that as our premise, think for a moment of the three principal players in the passage from Genesis above. 1. The offspring of Abram, the Hebrew people Israel. They will be sojourners, foreigners in a strange land. It's because of this that Israel will be instructed to be merciful and kind to the sojourners in the land that they will eventually come to possess. Not only will they be strangers in a strange land, they'll end up afflicted slaves there. 400 years of Egyptian slavery, to be exact, is what Abram is told. This is to be Israel's prophetic destiny. Then, and only then, will they be delivered with great possessions, the wealth of Egypt. And it's a wealth they won't even be able to spend because they'll spend 40 years in a desert dying off because of their fear, doubt, and unbelief. Then they'll enter into their inheritance. Tell me, what's so good about any of that? Number 2, Egypt, the nation that Israel will serve. Egypt is going to be blessed by Abram's descendant Joseph. You know, that kid with the cool coat who was sold into slavery. This blessing stems from the prophetic promise that Abram was given about all the nations of the world being blessed by and through his line. Abram's descendants will ultimately move to Egypt with favor because of Joseph. But as time goes by, the leadership of Egypt will forget Israel's favored status and enslave them, partially because of their sheer population numbers, another cause and effect of the blessing given to Abram. Enslaving and afflicting Israel would bring judgment on Egypt through God's Levitical prophet Moses, judgment on Egypt and their gods. Note, Israel left Egypt 430 years after entering Egypt to the very day. 3. The Amorites. The Amorites were a mountain people that inhabited the land of Canaan and were the descendants of Canaan, the son of Ham and Noah's cursed grandson. They are historically credited for taking the small, then unimportant town of Babylon as their own and raising it to minor independent city-state status and into the major power capital it is known for being today. They worshiped the god Amuru, who was married to the goddess Asherah, the queen of heaven, who is referenced in Deuteronomy 12. Amuru could also be the fertility god Baal. Amos 2:9 describes the Amorites as a powerful people of great stature, like the height of the cedars. We would call them giants. Deuteronomy 3:11 describes Og, the Amorite king, as the last of the remnant of the Rephaim. Some of you may know the Rephaim as being descendants of the Nephilim of Genesis 6. Dun, dun, dun. Did you just see a typo there, Alyssa? After giants, there's no quote, end quote. Israel would spend 430 years in Egypt, endure slavery, and then wander an additional 40 years in the desert before being allowed to return to Canaan to claim and possess their promised land, their prophetic inheritance, because the iniquity of the Amorites had not yet matured. Prophetically, it would take the Amorites 470 years to run their sinful course before Israel, as instruments of God's wrath under Joshua's command, would be able to punish and exterminate them. Do you ever get the feeling that you're serving someone else's agenda? I mentioned Alyssa. For those of you that are new here, Alyssa is, well, she basically runs this whole thing. Without her, we have nothing. So if you have any questions, any emails, if there's anything you need, if we talk about something you're not sure, feedback at E2iSeries.com. She will help you with that. Alyssa, say hi to the nice people.
Hi, everybody. I was just typing. That is not even close to true, but I'm happy to help however I can. That
is close to being true. I can't do this without, anyway. Anyway, With our carnal mind and practical reasoning, the flesh, it's difficult to believe that our God would allow a 17-year-old to be beaten and sold into slavery by his brothers just because those brothers took offense to his prophetic dreams. With our transformed spiritual mind, eyes to see and ears to hear, the Spirit, we are able to see the bigger picture. We see, as God saw, this act of Joseph's human rights being violated as the catalyst to saving the entire planet from a global famine. Do we advocate or condone beatings and human trafficking? That's a stupid question. Of course not. Do people get beaten and sold into slavery? Unfortunately, yes. In the practical, the flesh, it makes absolutely no sense to keep Israel away from their promised inheritance because an entirely different people group needs to mature in their evil godlessness. It makes no sense to enslave the people group of your choice, Israel, while you punk their oppressors over and over and over so that said entity can flex their muscles. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah. Israel's slavery, liberation, and then systematic elimination in the desert shows very little to no love, grace, mercy, and the all-important choice and free will to those that are non-spiritual and forced to lean on their own understanding. The constant hardening of Pharaoh's heart by God resulted in horrific plagues and ultimately the death of all the firstborn of Egypt's humans and animals. This is difficult to reconcile when there is very little to no historical, cultural, and especially spiritual reference or understanding. Even then, many still decide not to comprehend or find it impossible to have God's point of view on the matter. Israel and Egypt will have to interact, good, bad, or indifferent, for 400 years because a not entirely human people group, the Amorites, needs the time to mature in their demonic lives. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law, to his Torah. Indeed, it cannot. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If, I love that. I love the fact how Paul always puts that if. Let me repeat that. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If, in fact, that means there's a possibility that this isn't true for you. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if in fact the Spirit of God dwells in you. A large part of our disconnect with the biblical narrative is our inability to remember that we serve at the pleasure of our King, the Creator of heaven and earth, the sovereign King of the universe. It's easier to just read the Bible through the filter of our practical reasoning and personal religious reference experience than it is to eat the scriptures, the Word of God, Jesus, Yeshua. This is evident in how we process the absolute truths, instructions, and character of God, and whether we react incorrectly or respond correctly to these absolutes is greatly affected by our choosing the carnal or the spiritual when making those determinations. How far we allow these truths to permeate and transform our lives and our identity has always been and will always be a matter of choice. Welcome to this amazing journey from Exodus to ingathering. Now, those of you that have been here and have already gone through this, isn't that amazing what we're saying and how it's going to actually manifest in the next 52 weeks? I think it's amazing. But anyway, let us go into dun dun dun. Oh, look at that. Let me turn off my camera. Let me turn on this camera. See, I've got all these buttons to push. You think I don't have like 15 people behind the camera doing this for me. And let's go into gallery mode. There's gallery mode. Hello. Hello, everyone. Look at all these new faces. And we have a bunch of new names over here on YouTube and Facebook. My name's Alan Aguirre. This is called gallery mode, and this is where you interact. And if you're comfortable, obviously. And those of us that have already been here and that have already done this, this is where you get to steer the not the Titanic, but steer the boat. You know what I mean? The Titanic's that's not a good thing. Oh man! So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, wow, look, because I know, those of us that have done this already, we already know what's going to happen, and it's amazing how we from the very beginning we set the stage. This is spiritual; it's not physical. It requires our submitting to the higher calling of the Father in order to be able to be taught, and in order for us to learn what Israel it's not that Israel couldn't, they just wouldn't obey. And all the things that they encountered and what they were challenged with, Korah, not having food, not having water, the basic instruction of Shabbat, the original instruction for Shabbat wasn't to lock yourselves up in your tent. That only happened because they failed Shabbat at the very, very beginning, I mean, it was a test, right? And they immediately blew it. So, yeah. So, anyway, man, what do you guys think? What's going on out there? How are you? Who wants to go first? Don't be shy.
Hey, Alan, it's good to have you back.
Hi, Cynthia. How are you? That's right. So, if you don't know, I was gone for the last 17 days. My wife and I normally go to, it's our anniversary in October. We normally go to New York. Instead, we took a road trip to Florida and back. And yes, it's good to be back. Cynthia, you have more than that. I know you do.
Yes. My gosh, this is such a lovely chapter to start with. I think the whole thing that really gets to me is allowing myself to be transformed.
Man.
Because if I don't allow that, I'm just going to continue in the practical mind.
Yeah. It's amazing, right? Because
the
Holy Spirit is a gentleman. He's not going to impose himself on you.
That's right.
He's going to so we raise our children, and our form of discipleship, and Alyssa can attest to this. She was with us for like 12 years. We will gladly give you enough rope to hang yourself with. We give you enough rope, because you can't force people into obedience. They have to want to obey, right?
Yeah, I know, but so many people, if they don't have that practical thing going on in their heads, if they don't see the way our spiritual eyes and ears have to see, then we are truly blind and deaf, and we need His Spirit to open our eyes and our ears. And we need to have that posture where we are always submitting to the way God wants to do something, because it never really works in your head if you don't let the Lord fill you with His thoughts. Then our thoughts are just not big enough. They're just not there with Him on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's where our slavery is. I think that's where, Satan's pride is exactly there. He wants to do it his way. Humans want to do it their way. And God is just saying, no, you got to come with me.
Yeah. Well, we know Lucifer, he wanted to be the Most High.
Right.
And that kind of got in the way, his ego, his whole trip got in the way. Being a public figure, being an entertainer, I sang, I don't know, who knows, but I sang for a living for 30 plus years. The pride of life.
Mm.
Celebrity is really the pride of life for humans, And it's quite the monkey to wrestle with on your back, I mean, I was 7 years old and I wanted to be a rock star, and guess what? I pulled it off. And then and then God's like, hello. You know, what a wrestling match. Because, man. And I
Yeah.
sang about it because it was quite the struggle.
I had similar experience. Very theatrical family.
Oh,
A
nice.
lot of theater, a lot of being on stage, singing, dancing, all of that stuff. So when it came to worship, there was a whole thing that had to happen with me in order to let go of all of that pride of life.
And it's
'Cause it
interesting
sure
you
is
meant.
there easily.
Go ahead.
No, it's there so easily, the pride of life. Well, everything around you too, everybody's encouraging you. Hey, be a star.
They feed it. They feed
Yeah,
into
they do. They feed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
So,
interesting you said worship because that really is the catalyst, right? Because I mean,
yeah.
Lucifer was the worshiper. He was the worship
Oh, that's
leader in
right.
heaven.
That's
And
right.
even then he was able to do what he did. But for us, the number one thing we can do to begin the alignment process, like you said, is worship. Because it really puts things into perspective. It is such an amazing
Mm.
weapon. And we talk, I'm not trying to hawk a book, but we talk a lot about that in this book.
Yeah, I'm reading that one right now. So
Yeah.
this is spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it scary? Is it scaring you?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I appreciate that. And we greatly appreciate the support. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm ready. This is great. I'm ready for this.
Oh man, it's exciting. So before we hear from someone else, let's hear from someone that's already been through this. As a set the prep the field. You know what I'm saying? You know. Or not.
I'm busy scribing over here, man. No, I've struggled with that thing about being a rock star, but I've been blessed with the inability to have any real significant talent. So, yeah, I've been protected by the Father that way. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. But anyway, this actually I missed the first 2 weeks the first time around. I read the chapters obviously, but I wasn't part of the interactive piece of it. But definitely setting aside all that we are and all that we understand and going in. I mean, I think back to Abraham where he was plucked out of a life and called to be separate unto the Lord. And, it's hard to fully articulate, in this sense that I think we have collectively as the church made up our minds and established patterns. And to this point, I don't think this is widely enough understood. And part of what I pray that happens here is that we get people to abandon the practical reasoning and really look at things with spiritual eyes, have their eyes opened, have their hearts changed, and walk out in the truth and not be caught into these patterns and behaviors that simply can't please God.
Yeah. Jason, as someone that has, quote, been there, done that, how would you prepare this new group? How would you prepare them and how would you pray for and over them?
Well, first off, I would definitely encourage pre-reading, taking the full week or as much time as you can to process what's in each week's devotional. there's a lot there. And the one thing that I think I can attest to is that progressively as we went on, it became more clear how this is supposed to play out. And I think that we have gotten fairly close in this group, and we've known each other and prayed for each other. But I think primarily the prayer that I would encourage everyone to stand in is, or there's several, but like Paul prayed that they would have a spirit of wisdom and revelation, that they would have their that they would truly experience the new covenant being the writing of his word on, replacing the stone heart with the heart of flesh, and having his word written there, so that we don't walk after the law as in itself, but that by his spirit in us, we would be able to accomplish obedience. So I think those are very important factors in all of this.
Right. So we begin with a prophetic, a heavy duty prophecy that's going to extend 400 years. It's a 400-year prophecy of you're going to be in Egypt while the sin or the iniquity matures of your enemy, which they will eventually be your enemy, and then you're going to go and possess your prophetic inheritance by dispossessing this enemy. As Christians, we're not really equipped or instructed on how to navigate those type of waters. I mean, this is pretty much out of a lot of pastors' pay grade, understanding how to go about doing that. One, what is it that we are actually talking about, let alone to be able to teach our people how to navigate these type of waters. And we're coming out of the gate at this point. There's a prophecy of a very uncomfortable prophecy of enslavement while your enemy matures, and then you're going to be released. The idea is to be trained in the process of after your release, so that you can dispossess your enemy, so that you don't succumb to their ways. And as we all know, what happens to Israel in the desert is quite the train wreck, and we are to learn from that, so that we can avoid it, so that we can be faithful and successful in getting from point A, Egypt, to point B, our prophetic inheritance, our promised land, our territory. Uncomfortable yet?
Alan, I noticed when you read it, 2020's hindsight, but when you was reading the verse Romans chapter 8, the very last verse there in 9a seemed to be so prophetic of what the transformation of all the saints who went through this before here on E2iS, what it came to, and really sets a foundation. I can't, when I looked at it, I'm going, wow, that says it all. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if in fact the Spirit of God dwells in you. And the discipleship that we constantly have to grow in and be transformed in is the flesh and the spirit. And not to say how we learn through the desert, not only spiritual warfare, but how to engage using our gifts. So that really spoke a lot. And a lot of believers, they don't even know what the difference between spirit and flesh is. The word for flesh, yetzer hara, it means the evil inclinations that we have, the evil inclination towards pleasure, the evil inclination towards self-preservation, the evil inclination towards gain. That's what the flesh is. And what the spirit is, like it says here, is life and peace. So our discipleship, our growth, and our transformation, we're able to quantify it by saying we can really see ourselves when we can quickly respond by the Spirit of God. And again, what do we, like a lot of people, they ask for the prophetic and tongues, because exercising our gifts and being able to take the word of God and put it in our soul and our spirit, that's what's going to give us life for what we're about to face and what's ahead of us and what we'll learn about as we go through the word here, going through the Exodus again. Just some thoughts. Anybody else?
No, thanks for covering for me. I have a grandson who's under the weather, and he's here at the house where I'm hanging out with him. So sorry about that. Hey, this is live, and this is real world, real life. Yeah, thanks, Lenny. I heard a good portion of that, but yeah. What's exciting is I know what's gonna. Those of us that have done this already, we know what's gonna happen, and this thing is gonna get real, man. It's gonna get so real, and it's that convergence. A lot of people don't anticipate an intersection, a cross section with the King of the Universe in their lives, in their real world, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Who else? So this is where we're at. We are looking at a very spiritual thing that we need to start cooperating with, because we have to start walking and actually functioning in the spiritual realm versus our practical. So we can either hear from new people or more testimonies and more encouraging and words of wisdom from those of you that have already done this.
Hey.
For those of you that don't know, that would be Doug. Doug will always announce himself in that manner. What's up, Doug? Where's your face? What are you wearing today? What do you got going on?
Welcome back, Mr. Cartier.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Why don't I see you? Where are you?
Look at the huge menorah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So this is Doug has. Go ahead, Doug. Let's see your face. Normally, we've seen various things from Doug. Doug, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate Cynthia and Lenny. Cynthia let go of the pride of life, and Lenny let go of self-preservation and personal gain. That's like an everyday thing for me, man. I talked to Tim recently on the phone. I really appreciated his time and still do. Going through some real heavy stuff, but I know it's all God's will, and I got to go through it. I can really relate to what you said, Alan and Cynthia, about having talent and thinking I was using it for the right thing, and just being too hung up on the personality of it. It was almost like a cult of personality for me. And just to summarize, and I've just had to let go of all of that, and I'm not fighting it, but it's been very challenging for me. I just kind of got thrown into something else really big, and I believe it's God's will, and I'm just really, there's a lot of wrestling going on, and so this is very timely for me and my wife, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, Doug, as you know, we're very glad that you are here, and I know that you weren't here at the very beginning last time, so you're pretty excited. Are you pretty excited about what we're doing?
Yes, I am, very, very much so. I think it's good that we're starting at the beginning.
Now, do you remember what week you came in on?
Well, I'm trying to find my devotional. My books are packed in a box that I labeled opened first, and I can't find it.
Gotcha. Sorry to hear that.
I think it was like 30 something, but
Oh,
I have to
wow.
go back. And,
Wow. That's wow. Awesome.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, thanks, Doug. Appreciate it, man. Come on. Come on. I know you guys are busting
How do
the
you not
show.
have the Jeopardy music saved by now?
I know, right? I know, right? I'll work on that this week. Tim,
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
what's up?
Yeah, you know, I think I just really listen to everybody and Jason and stuff. To me, that's what a big part of what this group is about is you know, I can tell people new whatever that one of the biggest benefits and enjoyable parts of these gatherings is how much I have learned from other people that, you know, I don't even know, and from all over the world, literally. It's amazing to see, you know, not only what the content does for me, but then how much more I understand and get out of it, hearing other people's perspectives and other people's questions. A lot of the questions are just like, oh yeah. And when I was kind of time traveling back into this week and rereading it, what I think for me the big summary is alignment, you know, because to get out of that fleshly thinking, to turn on your spiritual eyes and ears, requires alignment. And my experience from Exodus to Ingathering is alignment is huge, and making that alignment. And I can tell you that having intense experiences and prayers answered and receiving and developing some new giftings, even at this stage of my life, it all required that alignment. And it's the alignment that's called for in this week. And I just can't overemphasize that. And I think the other part is we do have a lot of people that just kind of hang back and watch, and that's cool. It's totally great, because I think in a lot of ways they still participate. And I know even just sometimes people making comments on Facebook or Band or whatever that maybe can't hit the Zoom meeting or whatever, that I've just learned so much from everybody else. And it's interesting that I just, like Jason, I would encourage you to, you know, I usually try to read the upcoming devotional on Sunday night or Sundays and pray about it and think about it all day Monday, and then come to this, and then I hear everybody else's stuff and I'm like, oh, I get it, and then run with it from there. Yeah, make it like throughout the week, I guess is what I'm saying. And don't hesitate to participate. No pressure, but you don't understand, I think, how much you help other people when you do. And a lot of people have become very dear to me through their contributions, and they probably don't know it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Alyssa, if you've got that, but on Raton, Colorado is asking where can the weekly devotional be found? Planetbluemedia.com. It looks like this. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited because there's going to be new stuff. There's going to be new stuff that comes out of this, which is really exciting. And thank you, Alyssa. And yeah, it's going to be good. And I think it's going to really. I think this is actually putting fat on the second one, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And we love all the new Rude Awakening people, man. We love you to pieces. You know, I am so grateful for the relationship that I have with Rude Awakening and ministries. and not only Michael but his staff. Man, I I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, music, rock and roll, all that. It's really, you find more disingenuous and more disrespectful people than you find otherwise. And man, this rude awakening people, they are some of the most genuine, God-fearing, God-loving, respectful brethren I've ever met. And I've been doing this stuff for 40 years. I love my rude awakening family. And it's a real humbling to be in partnership with them. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for coming. If you're joining us from the Rude Awakening family, we appreciate it. All right, who else? So I know Allison's got a bunch of good stuff. How are you, Allison?
Yeah, I'm good. And yourself?
Good.
Fantastic. I was just thinking about the how you were talking about the 400-year prophecy, about how they're going into Egypt for 400 years, and then they're going to go in and fight for their inheritance. And I guess it was just a word that I heard recently, and it talks about what isn't in there. Yeah, and when God gave them the promise and said, okay, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, there was a lot that wasn't spoken to them or written down in that prophecy. They didn't say, okay, then you're going to go into the wilderness and you're going to go without water. It didn't say you're going to fight to do this. It's going to take 7 years.
Right.
And for me, when I look at this and about engaging with our gifts, you said, it's about how to engage with our gifts, through life. But for me, I find the difficulty isn't that. It's just going back to that position of going, okay, hold on, because I find transition is a really, really messy place. And there's a lot that, God can give you a promise and say, okay, this is the promise. And and I heard the person said as well, God will speak to you on a need-to-know basis. And he doesn't give you a lot of the details in between. And it's when you get hit by that curveball and you think, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And then you've got to realign. And I think it was Tim maybe just then that was talking about aligning ourselves. And I'm thinking, I find it's a lot about realigning in those messy transitions or living detours. Or, when I look at the map that the Israelites were taken on, God would turn around, they would go in a loop. And they would go back this way and they wandered around, of course, and God was still teaching them in that. But it's those loops, it's the detours, it's feeling like, you're still fighting, but Moses' arms or whatever has fallen down and you're waiting for them to be propped back up again to be able to get your second wind and to be able to progress a little bit more. And then maybe the arms drop down again and then you're fighting again and things like that. It's in those moments of being able to wonder how you fortify yourself in the spirit and in the spiritual gifts so that you don't kind of get winded or knocked off and then have to try to reestablish yourself again and get your footing again. So that's where I find it really hard, because God doesn't tell you, and of course he's not going to tell you everything because it's about faith and trust, but how to be able to consistently engage without being knocked off your feet. And I guess that's part of spiritual maturity, but how to navigate to that point of having that spiritual maturity.
Yeah, so Lance Wallnau, I love Lance Wallnau because he's so intense. He says, regarding transition, if it feels like hell, but you think God's in it. And we've all been there. Apparently, we all have to go through a desert experience for some reason. That's just part of this whole thing. We all have to go through this desert thing and learn. If you think about it, Moses spent 80 years of his life going around the same mountain. That is like bizarre. That is like the craziest thing. Wow. Because Mount Sinai is Mount Hebron. It's the same, it just depends where you're at. Man, but we have to go, apparently we have to go through this process of a desert experience. Apparently, Joseph could have tapped out 7 or 8 times in his desert experience, but he chose not to. And eventually, as we go forward, I will share about a book of writings by a Pharisee about 100 years before Messiah, and I mention it, and what they say about Joseph in that, and how he did not. It's suggested in these writings that Joseph did not divulge who he was, a prince of a Hebrew prince, so as not to shame his brothers. And that's just, man, I can't even, that's, and we will eventually get to that in this series. So I believe in this series. So yes, there is a desert experience with your name on it, and you have to victoriously go through it, and you have to go through it with a good attitude. Because if you go through it with a bad attitude, it's like 2 steps, one step forward and three or four steps back, right? Grumbling is actually one of the things that took Israel out, and why they didn't make it to their inheritance. So, new or veteran, who wants to share?
I was just thinking that I think that's really important what you said, don't tap out.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things. As long as you don't tap out and you're willing to, okay, then what did I do wrong in that case? And learn to move forward. Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah. Paul says he's learned to deal with or without, right? He doesn't tap out. What does it say? A righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets up, right? A righteous man gets up one more time. Don't give up. Stand firm. Never surrender. Never give up, right? I don't know if you ever saw Galaxy Quest, but is Nathalie, is that your name?
That is my name. You got
So
it right. Thank you.
I see that you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to share?
I did. I was going to share.
Well, wait, Nathalie, you're brand new. Where are you from?
Rude Awakening.
But where are you coming? Where do you live?
I live just North County, San Diego, in San Marcos, little town north of San Diego.
Did you know I'm a Burbank boy?
A Burbank boy?
I'm a Burbank boy.
Ellen, I've been in California for maybe 16 years now. I came from the Dallas area.
Oh.
And Gloria Zion, actually.
Oh, you know about us and Gloria Zion, right?
Well, I know that there's some kind of affiliation, but I don't really know what it is.
Can I tell you what it is?
Please do. I'd love to know. All
right. I'm from Los Angeles. The Lord moved us to Dallas in 1994. And we've been involved with Chuck Pierce since 2008. Chameleon Church is actually a House of Zion since 2011 or so. Yeah. And so we've been interacting with Chuck since 2008, and we lived in Dallas for 18 years, and then we moved here. We literally waited 18 years in Dallas to move here to Utah. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I was just going to share how I've been through a number of transitions. Like I was going to say, I've been in California for 16 years, and I barely know anything outside my neighborhood. I don't like it here.
Really? Well,
can't wait to go back to Texas.
Oh, geez, that's so weird, because I had the same experience. I went from LA to Dallas, and I couldn't believe what was happening to me. This will help. I know there's a original Tommy's chili cheeseburger near you. What you need to do is you need to go find the original Tommy's chili cheeseburger location nearest you. And you need to sink your teeth into a double chili cheeseburger with extra chili on it. And then tell me about how you don't like it there.
I will try to find a Tommy's. I've never heard of a
Don't
Tommy's.
Don't try. Do it.
Do it. Do I have to drive to Burbank to find one?
No. There's actually one there. There's one there. I think
there's one in San Diego.
Yes, within 2 to 3 miles of where you live. I promise you. And then you need to come back and give us all the testimony about that. Amazing.
I'm writing that down. Tommy's
original Tommy's chili cheeseburger. This is not your daddy's This is not your father's Bible study or discipleship training program. This is like the real deal. You have to go to Tommy's.
I will.
Oh my gosh,
And I will,
I'm so,
and I will report back.
Lenny, your mouth is watering like mine, right? Oh, jeez.
That good, huh?
Oh, it's
I
better
don't think
than
I've ever
good.
had a chili cheeseburger. I've had chili hot dogs, but not a chili cheeseburger.
You've never lived.
But what I was going to say about transitions, the thing that gets me through any transition or difficult time all the time is the scripture from Job, and that's though he slay me, yet will I trust in him.
Yes.
And it just doesn't matter. Ups, downs, backwards, forwards, it doesn't matter. I'm trusting him. He's got the master map and the plan. And I just do whatever I do and trust that he will lead and guide me. And it's never failed. I've screwed up a lot of times, but he's right there with me, straightening me out. It's been my crutch, my walking staff. It's been everything.
So yes, that is massive kingdom perspective. And Father, I ask that you would continue to bless your daughter with that. But more importantly, I'm just kidding. Jason Walker, our scribe, has posted the location of the nearest Tommy's.
Oh, you're kidding.
In the chat section.
3 or 4 people posted with links.
We're so horrible. We're horrible people over here. Here you are pouring out your heart, and we're talking about
That's perfectly fine. Where the heck is the chat?
Claremont. So there's a chat on Zoom. Look at the very bottom. It says chat.
Are you on mobile or are you on desktop?
Yeah, I'm on iPad. It's,
This is where Alyssa kicks in. Alyssa, help the sister out. Get her
it.
to a Tommy's tonight.
Oh man, you might have to swipe up to find the chat on iPad.
I got it.
Let me see. I don't use mobile. There you go. Okay.
Those of you that have had Tommy's know exactly how important this is.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Okay, I will be going.
Oh man.
If manna had tasted like a original Tommy's chili cheeseburger, they wouldn't have grumbled.
And this is good enough to make me like California, you say, huh?
Oh my gosh.
It'll at least make it easier.
I'm
my
writing
God.
it down.
We're so bad. Oh my gosh. All right, let's try and get back on track. You were talking about, yes, God is sovereign. We're talking about God's sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter what the transition is. It really doesn't matter whether it's an up, down, or sideways. He's got the plan. He knows what's going on. And if he chooses to take you out, put you down, knock you over, whatever, you got to trust in him.
Yeah. Some of you have heard the testimony when my youngest daughter, who's 31 and the mother of three of our 4 grandchildren, when she was about, I'm going to say about 3 or 4 years old, she fell and hit her head. And 2 weeks prior to that, out of nowhere. So God speaks to me when I'm either in my garage or in the shower. And he told me, I could take any of your family members. Yeah. And you'd have to be okay with it. You'd have to be good with it. And I was like, no. What kind of a psycho are you? That's not cool at all. And then about 2 weeks later, our daughter was coming out of our friend's vehicle. I was holding. She slipped and fell, hit her head. And a couple hours later, we were like, oh man, we took her to the hospital because, And the doctor comes in and he goes, well, we're a little concerned that her brain might be swelling. This is not a good thing. And I was like, oh. And God like taps me. He like pushes me and goes, hey, remember that thing I told you about 2 weeks ago? This is it. And I'm like, oh crap. So I went and found an empty room in the hospital and I got on my face and I went, yes, Father, you are absolutely sovereign. And you can take any of my children or my wife. You can take any of my family at any time. And my sword will still be yours because you are sovereign. Unlike the Christian thing where you barter with God for your child's life, I submitted to his sovereignty. He is sovereign. And yes, you can take my family's life at any moment. And you're still sovereign. I went back into the room, and the doctor said, "Okay, we're all good. She's fine." Blah blah blah. And that was 30. That was 25 plus years ago, and it has never changed. It's never. Yeah. God is sovereign. He can do whatever the heck he wants, and he does. And I will and am good with it. Yeah.
You learned that lesson mercifully.
Yes. David fasted and prayed for a week, and the child still died.
Wow.
But what did he do after the child died? He got up and washed, ate,
Wash his face. Yeah.
shook it off, right? He moved on.
Moved on.
People don't know. People don't know how to do that. Yes, God's mercy on my life has been, yeah. All right, who else? I know there's more. I know there's more. Look at all these people. Ryan's here. Vern! And Jane Kenaway, and Will Carlton, and Leanne Swick. Chris? And Cheryl. It's like Romper Room. Remember, we've talked about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The sovereignty of God is a very interesting subject that people don't broach very often. But because he is a sovereign God, and he has his children's best interests at heart, and it's very hard to stand firm in that sovereignty. And I think that was part of what the Hebrews did not get, and that's why they wandered around the mountain for so long, because they weren't even across the sea looking back at Pharaoh's army and everybody dead under the ocean, or under the sea, and they were already complaining, and they just continued to complain and, like you say, grumble. So I think it's really a good lesson that you learned, and that I've learned as well. My husband passed away a few years back, and it was a 72-degree day. It was a beautiful day. And that's when God chose to take him from me. I wasn't on the site, but it's like, I could say, oh, he took my husband, but that's the way that he wanted it. And I just kept moving forward. Was I sad? Yeah, I still am sad sometimes, but that's because we're human. Mm-hmm. But you just keep walking forward in the lighted path that God gives you. And that's not always easy, because sometimes there's just rocks in the way. Yeah. But you just keep going. And, I think it's, what is it? It's Philippians, and it says stand firm. It's like the end chapter 4. And it says keep standing firm in union with the Lord, and think about the things that are true and noble and righteous and pure and lovable and admirable. And sometimes that's very, very, very difficult to do, but he is there with us. So here we all are together in this place, worshiping the God that we love. And the book came, by the way.
Oh, good.
So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and it also says, after doing everything you can possibly do, stand.
Yeah, and that's the hard part to do is the stand, because you're like standing there like, this is kind of scary. Yeah. But you do, you were scared, I'm sure, when your daughter's life was in jeopardy, and and I was scared because all of a sudden I didn't have my best friend and my husband with me, and but I just kept standing.
I've learned something in the last few. So I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of death. Right. So I've had to deal with this thing, but I've had the privilege of knowing some people that deal with death or look at death in a totally different way. And we're the only ones that really hold on to this life as tightly as we do. God literally doesn't. He's like, no, man. What's more important is truth and serving me and obedience to me. That's more important than your actual physical life. The only thing you know. Man, such a paradigm shift, you know? And I think we address that to some extent in the next 52 weeks in this series. You know what I mean? But it's like he delights in the blood of his martyrs. I mean, it's like it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different paradigm. And we need to understand that. How do we do that? We put on the mind of Christ. We put on the mind of Messiah. That's one of the first, those are some of the earliest things we were taught when we first came to salvation that we end up losing as we go forward. I've been doing this for 40 years. Put on the mind of Christ. That's typically the Christian way of saying that. We put on the mind of Messiah. That changes everything. That shifts the whole narrative. That shifts the perspective. Right, Jane? I mean, I'm saying that because I'm assuming you've gone through that process with the death of your husband, for example. You know, it's putting on the mind of Messiah.
I think that it definitely changes you in ways that you can't imagine. I think that for me, I lost a lot of people in my life. My uncle just being the most recent. He died like on the 27th of October. But I look back at my life. My dad died when I was 17. My grandparents, my mother. You know, I've lost a lot of people. But it's like they all knew God in their way. And they stood their ground on what they knew. My mother, especially, she comes to my mind. And the sadness I feel is human sadness. It's not spiritual sadness. Does that make any sense to you?
It does. It does.
So that's the thing. It's like they're with the Father to me, and I'm here, and I move on. And that sounds kind of disrespectful, but it really isn't.
It isn't.
Because
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not disrespectful because he says there's a time to mourn. I mean, he knows how we are as humans because he made us. He's very intricately aware of what and how and who we are.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this is nothing to do with anything, but it does. Everybody was like saying, how can you like be this way? And I said, well, he counts the hairs on my head. He knows who I am, which is what you're saying. And I was thinking today, I thought, people say, well, how can he know that? And I'm like, well, we have chromosomes and we have DNA. And you start looking into that science, they can find out exactly who your parents were, so many different things. And God made us. So, the science backs up. Not that we need it, but I thought,
Sure.
How do you say to a secular person? And I'm like, well, look at DNA for goodness sake,
Yeah.
So, and God's greater than that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for the book again.
Absolutely our pleasure. Would anyone else like to share?
Greetings, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, this is Will in Lewistown.
How you doing, Will?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing all right.
I just thought I'd throw my measly 2 cents worth in. I think it's a pretty important subject to learn the spiritual aspects of life in the greater Exodus. That whole realm will be something we all minister in, I anticipate. The scriptures that talk about how that men's hearts fail within them and all that. This is all part of the lead up to the really what amounts to emotional trauma of the greater Exodus. There's a fire lit under our belly to get us moving in his direction. And largely, we need to be able to minister to one another, to become truly our brother's keepers in order to get through the entire experience. I could go on and on about my experiences in this, but suffice to say, it's one of the things that I think that none of us are as grounded in or equipped in as we are going to need to be. I guess I can turn on this video here. At any rate, I'll tell my story one of these times, but I can tell you, I got pretty excited about the greater Exodus 15, 16 years ago. And I mean, I filled up warehouses and I have farms and all this, and I'm doing these kind of projects all over the world. And lo and behold, the Spirit of God brought that to a screeching halt so that I would learn how to minister to people in trauma. And of course, you know how that happens. You go through it yourself. That's that desert experience that you were talking about. That's where the gold really is, in that desert experience. And you come out equipped spiritually to be worth something to someone else in a desert experience. I've often surmised that people going through a difficult time ahead of the greater Exodus are being prepared for whether it's leadership or some form of ministry. They'll be ready when the time comes. You talk about prepping and being a prepper. God has his way of doing things that's a little different than the natural. I did all the natural. I'm still doing all the natural, but the spiritual is what God was interested in the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an excellent point, because I think, well, I mean, you look at our forefathers in the desert, they were definitely hung up on the physical, so, and I think prepping, there's a lot to be said for that, but far more is having that spiritual preparation. Had they been more spiritually prepared when the report of the spies came in, perhaps they would have seen things the way that Caleb and Joshua did. And that just ties in so perfectly with this week's lesson about, seeing things from God's perspective and getting that alignment in. And I think everybody, to a degree, probably feels like they're not spiritually prepared, but man, some people are really not prepared, and we've been pretty spoiled.
A sense of entitlement leads people to tremendous fallacies and mistakes. And when God begins to reveal you to yourself, ooh la la, oh wretched man that I am, unworthy servant, and all of that, right? But that's when the real good stuff gets going.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more.
Will, where are you from again?
I'm in Lewistown, Montana, central Montana. I'm
your neighbors
here.
With Tim.
I don't know him.
Yeah, about 3 hours. I'm in Kinsey, just outside of Miles City.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, really.
Yeah. So I'm envying your elk right now.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I've got a lot to share someday on manna and all of that. In fact, just a real brief thing on the whole food deal is that, I mean, I've owned Montana ranches for 4 generations, and I have put together farm-based ministries for over 50 years. and I'm doing it all over the world, have been doing it all over the world for a long time. But I came to realize that the first 3 plagues, they fell on all of Israel and all of Egypt. And, there's that saying, biblical history is prophecy. They were familiar with the Abrahamic covenant. They knew that God had a deal with them about food and clothing. They didn't know the 10 Commandments yet. They didn't know the Torah, anything, but they knew the Abrahamic covenant. And so when they lost their jobs as slaves, they go, oh, okay, our history is that God saved us when he used Joseph at Goshen. So no more jobs, 3 plagues, that's it. They're out of the economy. They're just worried about one thing, what they're going to eat, right? So they go back to Goshen. Why? Because Goshen was one of the most choice places, even to this day, in all of Egypt for growing food. Okay. Well, there were still conflicts to come about what they were going to eat, this, that, and the other. Yet we know that God fed them for 40 years and their clothing never wore out. Those are the 2 elements of the Abrahamic covenant. All right. They had a lot more to learn. They had the 10 Commandments and on and on and on to go. They were being asked to grow up, but food and clothing never failed them. If the greater Exodus is within the overarching concept of the restoration of all things, then I would submit to you that food will be irrevocably changed. Even clothing will be irrevocably changed. As we're coming up on Hanukkah, I find it interesting that the Maccabees lived on herbs. They ate a plant-based diet. Check it out. Who else was on a plant-based diet? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Who else in the Garden of Eden? Adam and Eve. All right. So, long story short, I'm working on projects all over the world, establishing plant-based agriculture and nutrition programs. But when I discovered this was because I was dying of multiple diseases about 3-4 years ago. And it was that desert experience that compelled me to dig a little deeper in order to save my life. I could go on and on and on, and I usually do, and I'll try not to do that. But I do think that when I learned what to put in my mouth, I then learned for the first time in over decades and decades and decades what to put in the ground. And it changed everything. Changed everything. Not only that, it added 10 or 15 years to my life.
Right.
So, I mean, very interesting stuff.
Are you familiar with the man from Nashville, from the Tennessee area, that's working in the Jordan area with agriculture and planting?
I talk to him once in a while. It's actually his.
What's his name?
I
know I've met him a couple times. I have him in my phone book. I just can't remember his name out of all of a sudden.
Yovel Farms is what I remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's his kids or something that are.
Yeah, he was an executive at UPS and left UPS in Tennessee and moved to Israel and started doing organic farming.
Donald is his name.
Donald?
At least that's the guy I've been talking to, and it's his kids that are with Yovel.
Yovel, that's right. What's his last name? Starts with an H, doesn't it?
I'm looking here.
Anyway, so you are familiar with them?
Yeah, I am. There's another ministry in California. In fact, they're kind of connected to you.
In Northern California, they worked with Brad Scott for a while.
Right. They have Brad Scott's whole catalog, in fact. They've been here to Montana, and they've looked at what I'm doing here. It's very interesting. Actually, I've always been curious if you have run into Brad Scott's wife, she's in your area.
Right. So a lot of people don't know this, but Brad Scott and I were actually meeting. We were meeting together physically.
Yeah.
Waller. That's right. Tom Waller. Isn't that his name?
Yeah.
Tommy Waller?
Tommy Waller. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Alyssa. Is that you? Yeah, that's you. Yeah. So a lot of people don't know this, but yes, Brad Scott lived about an hour and a half from me. And we were actually meeting. We met a couple times, and we were discussing going out on the road together. And then he died. A lot of people don't know that because I don't really share that information. But yes, Brad Scott and I were in communication. We were meeting with each other here in my hometown on his way through town, discussing how we could partner together and do what it is that we do.
Brad had come here. I hosted Hebrew Roots conferences for about 8 years, and first I had Bill Cloud, then I had Brad Scott, and then I got kicked out of every church in town. So,
welcome to the club, brother.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I would indulge that conversation and ask those questions, because I think it's important to know how we are all interconnected. It's a net, and these are cross points in the net, in the bigger net. Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you sharing with us, Will.
Well, there's more. Give me a call one of these times, and I'll fill you in on some things. I'll tell you one thing that's very interesting. Coming from California to Montana was not the richest cultural thing I ever did. But lo and behold, there is a very wealthy Hebrew Roots pastor that's a multi-billionaire. And he's a neighbor of mine here. He's got fleets of jets and helicopters and 9,000-foot runways all over the world. You can pick up a flight out of the middle of nowhere, Montana, and land in Israel in the Greater Exodus. Very interesting stuff I'd like to share with you guys a little bit more about. Not only that, my friends, after I got here, there was a preacher coming through from Ethiopia. And after 7 or 8 years, we got to be very, very good friends. And it's through Brad Scott, in fact, and his series on Messianic apologetics. It's gone out all over Ethiopia. And now they're asking us to show up. If any of you know Isaiah 11:11, how God gathers this people, this number that no man can count, out of the Horn of Africa, I think you'd be very interested in this stuff. Yeah. They're waiting on us right now, and they're willing to pay the ticket for us to come visit in Ethiopia.
Yeah, my adult children have actually served in Ethiopia multiple times. But yeah, let's at least start that conversation privately off.
Sure. Yeah, I think I left you my phone number. I can do that again if you need it. But
yeah, go ahead and send an email to Alyssa, feedback@E2iSeries.com, and that would
feedback. Okay.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you, Will. That's great information. This stuff is very important.
Yeah. We're underway. I think we're so close. I can tell by God's preparation with all of us that it's real close.
Right.
Real close.
And those of you that are on our Band network, our Band is a platform, internet platform that doesn't censor, so we're able to talk about certain things on there that we can't talk about on other platforms. We are we're going to begin providing resources under the name Project Issachar when it comes to food preparation and the word preparation. We're on YouTube and Facebook right now, so I will leave it at that. We are being censored in the US of A right now by private companies. So we talk about that on the Chameleon Church Show every once in a while. Tuesday mornings we talk about stuff people don't want us to talk about. We upset quite a bit of a bunch of people doing that. Oh well. So. Hey, is there anything else anybody would like to share? I know Ryan, you haven't said anything. And if there's anything else anybody else would like to share, please do so before I pull the plug. Cheryl, would you like to say something? Would you like to say hello? You don't have to, no pressure, but you are on Zoom.
Oh, no. Hello, how is everybody? I enjoyed this evening. I got a lot of work to do, I guess, here in prayer and worship and
It's crazy,
all
right?
of these things.
No,
Pardon?
Cheryl, it's crazy, right?
It is.
It is.
It's
Cheryl, where are you at?
I'm in Ohio. I'm in my son's bedroom.
Ohio. You know, the last 3 years or so, the Lord's been pushing Ohio on us. So we've been reaching out to Ohio. We know a lot of people in Ohio these days. Yeah.
Ohio is good. It's cold, but it's good. It might be warm tomorrow, but it's cold right now.
So what wisdom do you have to bring to us this evening, Cheryl? From
Wisdom. I don't know if I have a lot of wisdom. I don't know. Just got a lot of praying to do and more speaking in tongues when I pray, just getting closer to Yehovah and kind of settling myself down. I seem to be very anxious about something, but I don't know what. And that's it.
Well, would you like some prayer from some of these sisters while we're at it?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. While I close these shades, because it's dark out, because winter is coming. Would you sisters mind praying for your sister Cheryl about these things? You don't need an invitation. Just go. You don't need an invite. Just go.
You guys are giving me a complex here.
So now the Giants are going to punt. Do you know what a punt is?
Father, I just ask that you would invade Cheryl with the peace that passes all understanding, God, that whatever it is that is troubling her heart and causing this anxiety, God, that you would just flood her home and her space with your spirit, God, and just bring that peace, and that you would speak to her, God. And if it is something that she is feeling anxious about because she's supposed to pray into it, God, I just pray that you would reveal that to her and that your spirit would help to point those things out to her so that she can intercede and so that she can fight alongside your spirit, God, to break off of those things and to move forward in the strength and the power of your spirit, God, and that you would she would be reminded to just clothe herself daily in the armor of God.
Thank you.
Father, Cheryl, I thank you for her openness. And Father, I just ask that you continues to pray to you to give her wisdom, Lord, and guidance. That Father, whatever is troubling her, that you will bring that to light of what it is, and whether it's something she needs to be mindful of, or whether, Father, it's just a distraction of the enemy. And Father, we just ask that as she continues to pray in the Holy Spirit, Lord, that you will give her the ability to be able to build herself up, as you say, Lord, in your word. And that, Father, that you'll lead her, you'll guide her, you'll give her eyes to see and ears to hear, Father. And instead of something that might be tugging at her, Father, that might not be of you, I ask her, Father, that you give her the ability to be able to feel as you would have her feel, Lord. As we continue along this and we continue in our journey, Lord, I ask that you can give her the wisdom to be able to discern the difference between when it's the enemy trying to take her off course and when, Father, you're trying to just give her an awareness of maybe something that is mindful and needful for her to attend to. And Father, I ask that you help her to be able to seek out any additional any additional aspects of the giftings, Lord, that she might need throughout this, that the enemy might be trying to throw her off course with. And I ask, Father, that you also give her, again, a peace that surpasses her own understanding, knowing, as we spoke before, Father, that you are sovereign. And Father, you are certainly sovereign for Cheryl. And I ask, Father, that in that she will be the light and the salt that you have called her to be. In the name of Yeshua and the blood that is shed, I ask these things. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thanks, Sistren. Appreciate that. Anyone else? The floor is open. The conch is yours. Well, cool. Hey, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening and for starting off this Exodus Ingathering Week 1. I am very, very excited about what God's going to do in the next 52 weeks. So, hey, be sure to join us tomorrow morning. Chameleon Church Show. It's the Chameleon Church either on Facebook, Chameleon Church on YouTube, and Travelog as well. Blessings. Father, I pray for protection over finances and health and boundaries of their territory, Father, as we go forward in your amazing, amazing journey. Don't forget this week, we'll talk about it more tomorrow, but the new moon will be showing up this week. We've got so many plans. You know what the best thing about traveling and just leaving home is, especially when you're doing it with your wife, your life partner. You know, my wife and I have known each other longer than some of you are alive. Is the downloads we get from the Holy Spirit regarding next steps, strategies, how to go forward tomorrow. And we're excited to share those things with you. One of those things, like I said, is the Project Issachar on the Band platform. If you don't know what that is, ask Alyssa. Alyssa, wave. Feedback at E2iSeries.com. She'll be able to help you with that information. And how we're going to go, we have some ideas for our Patreon group with a Torah portion study for our Patreons, and just little things like that. And we want to share with you new moon, first fruit offerings, why we don't tithe. We talk about that in this book, and how we go forward with that, and how we do that, and how you can participate. Anyway, tomorrow morning, 8:45 a.m. Central Time Zone, we will see you on the Chameleon Church Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it, and we're very excited to have you with us on this journey within the next 52 weeks. It's going to go faster than you think. Ciao.
In the stains, I've searched so